Hello, everyone. Oh, hello. That's lovely. It is my honor to be here with you today as we commemorate the 22 humanitarian workers who lost their lives in the 2003 Baghdad bomb attack, and through them to pay tribute to all those out there who believe that our shared humanity is worth the risk, to pay tribute to the first in, to the last out, to the aid workers, the activists, the journalists, and to all the friends we've lost. But today, of course, is about more than that. Today, we live in a world that is more interconnected than ever, and yet, under that deluge of social media, TV stations, Twitter, there are too many voices that are just going unheard, too many voices that are too easy to switch off. In 2003, when that Baghdad bomb attack happened, the UN was asking for $3 billion to meet the needs of those caught in crises around the world. Now, that's a lot of money. This year, they're asking for $20 billion. In 2003, there were 28 million people around the world in need. By the end of this year, there will be over 100 million people in need. It's understandable then that faced with those realities on a daily basis, that it all becomes this nameless, faceless blur, that we all fall back on the usual cliches, the UNHCR tents, the WFP grain sacks, the UNICEF schools. I'm from Sudan, and the first conflict, the first crisis really that I covered was the crisis in Darfur. And I was 23, and if I think about it, I think that what drove me, other than the fact that I was very young and didn't know any better, was probably that I believed that if someone out there truly knew what was happening in Darfur, that if people really knew, then of course something would be done. Today, what we have is a forgotten Darfur. And I think, if I'm honest, there is a sense of failure that I take with me into every new crisis that I cover. We see the same equation again and again. The best of intentions plus competing interests plus what we so often call the realities on the ground too often equals inaction. 17 is the average number of years that people spend as a displaced person in their own countries. 6 is the number of UN appeals that currently have been running for 10 years. Now, maybe you already know this, you probably do, but today we are asking you to choose to look closer, to look beyond just those numbers. This is a little girl from Aden. She's called Mesa, and she's very tall for her age. Her and her family came out with us on the wooden cargo boat that we'd rented. And when I found out that she and her family hadn't brought any food with them, and this is after spending 50 minutes being told by her that her little brother was quite possibly the most irritating child on the face of God's earth. When we found out that they didn't have any food, I dug around for some energy bars to give her. And the first thing that she did was she gave them to him. This is Hannah, looking straight at you there. She was dreaming of medical school when the fighting in Aden broke out. And she told me that her boyfriend, whom she was hoping to become her boyfriend, that he'd had to stay behind, because just a few weeks prior, his mother had been killed, and his little sister had been hit by shrapnel. Even though we were probably one of the last ships to dock at Aden port, and even though he knew that his sister was dying and this was one of his last chances to escape, he wouldn't leave. And these are just 2 stories among the millions, 2 choices that are about more than the words you normally hear, like displaced and conflict. Words that actually, when you think about it, tell us very, very little. Least of all, why we should care. Almost all UN appeals, 90% of them, last for 3 years. It's understandable then that people are just exhausted. You know, we're all exhausted. But the world is in crisis. We keep promising never again, and yet here we are. Some people, of course, do care. Some people have a capacity for care that is extraordinary, and a capacity for care that even when it hurts, they keep giving. There's a couple here in New York called Chris and Amanda Pilkington. She's a chef. He works for JP Morgan, and they are absolutely, if you met them, the definition of normal, of nice, of comfortable. And yet, last year, during the Ebola crisis, when most of the world was busy closing its borders, Chris and Amanda saw a piece that we'd done about Ebola orphans, and they decided that they needed to adopt 4 of those children. In fact, initially, they thought that they could only adopt 2, and then they discovered that, that the children, who are not behind me right now, but we have a picture of them that we can bring up, they discovered that the 4 children had been brought up together, and they decided that they needed to find room in their home for those 2 more, and they did. But first they were told that international adoptions in Liberia had been suspended, especially international adoptions. All adoptions were suspended, but especially international ones. And while they wait and hope, they started organizing donation drives. They started sending clothing and supplies to thousands of orphans whose parents had died of Ebola. And then when they finally got that amazing news that the moratorium had been lifted, they continued to work, to raise money, to try and find more to be able to send out to those orphans in Liberia. Even while they're currently working to try and cut through the red tape and bring their children home, they are still raising funds for Ebola orphans. Now, in the general scheme of things, the funds that they've been raising, the clothing, the supplies, it's not that much. It's certainly not the billions that donor nations are asked to give. But to them, to Chris and Amanda and their communities, it is time, money, effort spent on people who look nothing like them, on people they have absolutely no reason to care for. Nobody wants to spend their day holding out a begging bowl. Nobody wants to spend their time stating the glaringly obvious, like, people shouldn't drown offshore if you have the ability to try and save them. Children shouldn't be condemned to grow up in refugee camps because of settlement quotas. No one should starve to death. We are at a tipping point, and we can't give up. I have seen out there so much amazing good in people that I know we wouldn't like the world very much if we did. So today, let's start with something small but so powerful. Let's see people for who they really are. Let's look beyond the cliches and the tents and the grain sacks. In the lead up to tomorrow, World Humanitarian Day, the UN has been asking people to share their stories from crises around the world at #ShareHumanity to help us see the people behind the crisis. The stories, honestly, the stories are amazing. They will surprise you with humanity's ability, with our ability to survive, to grow, to thrive. I know I always am. A friend of mine, Atika Schubert, she did this extraordinary story in the Zaatari refugee camp in Jordan, and until she did it, I didn't realize that one of the most popular places in the whole camp was the beauty salon. It's always full, apparently. I think what I'm trying to say is that all around the world, people everywhere, what they need, what they hope, what all of us dream, it isn't really all that different. Everyone wants the same things. Everyone has a right to want the same things. And we shouldn't forget that. Thank you.
I want to thank Nema for those inspiring words. Our next guest is singer-songwriter Moja. Moja is an artist and a champion of the rights of women and girls, having been a strong critic of female genital mutilation that she's been through herself. Moja comes from Mali, a land of music and storytelling, and she has proudly taken on that tradition. Her songs take us on a global musical journey that started in her hometown of Bamako, a hotbed of musical talent. Inspired by the musical traditions of her elders, Moja's music spans Sahel Desert blues, Mandinka guitars, and hip-hop. She has sung of the pain of the Malian migrants who risked their lives to flee by boat to Europe. She has sung of her powerful need to return home to show solidarity with her people. And she has sung to condemn the violence that broke out in Mali in 2012. Despite a peace agreement, violence continues to rock northern Mali, and 136,000 Malian refugees who fled that conflict remain stuck in camps, most too scared to return home. But they are not the only vulnerable ones. 43% of Malians live in poverty. Almost 1/3 of Malian children are malnourished each and every year. Located in the Sahel zone, Mali is prone to recurrent droughts, which have forced 3 million Malians to go hungry. Moja captures that suffering, the dignity, the energy, and the positivity of her fellow Malians.
It is such a privilege for me to be here today for the World Humanitarian Day, and I'm very touched because this week I shared a story on my social media as a part of the Share Humanity campaign. It was a story about Ibrahim from Nigeria and his family. He's 10 years old, and Boko Haram attacked his village, and his father was killed before his eyes, and he was buried alive, and his sister, who's 11 years old, had to come and get him out after 2 days where she tried to find him. So the story is about determination and resilience in Nigeria, and it touched me so much. And as a Malian woman, with what's going on now in Mali, with almost 3 years of war, people running away, for me it was so important to be here and to bring awareness to all those incredible stories. The next song I'm going to sing is called Water, and it's a song that I wrote because from where I come from, a lot of people don't have clean water, and for me it's one of the most important things. Used to walk 100 miles to get water for my people. Used to walk 100 miles to get water, to get water. I used to walk 100 miles to get water for my people. Used to walk 100 miles to get water, to get water. Ubitamala dongodo katajide nini sunguru ni kamali ni beki brematadi duni angama zau delila. Dugutigi ukumana rob neulai rutara nga halisini ube kolonji de solila. Na mahine anga mogola ube sage ube nyanina uha kebe bwaula na yuto kono na filila. I used to walk 100 miles to get water for my people. Used to walk 100 miles to get water, to get water. Ube para la kile koro wa shijibe jigi mini GWG hali koli jitu bolo anga muso negana. Fajeo hamina mom so kashira nga halibi anga rob neu tigera na mahine anga mogola ube sege ube nyanina uha kebe bwaula na yuto kono na filila. Used to walk 100 miles to get water for my people. Used to walk 100 miles to get water, to get water. La 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 la. When life gets harder and the desert got the blues, I dare you, walk a mile in tied-out shoes. My brothers are marching 1,000 miles. They all share one dream and a broken smile. Running away from hell straight to the sea. Got on the boat cause they had to see the El Dorado on the other side. Used to walk 100 miles to get water for my people. Used to walk 100 miles to get water, to get water. La 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 la. Used to walk 100 miles to get water for my people. Used to walk 100 miles to get water, to get water. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's such a